As time passed, Sicil couldn't help but notice Ethan in a different light. Subtle moments in their friendship began to reveal the depth of his feelings, and slowly, without her realizing it, her own emotions for him started to shift. The more time they spent together, the more those moments crept in, often surprising her and leaving her awkwardly flustered. One day, Sicil and Ethan were sitting in the library, supposedly studying for their midterms, though Ethan, as usual, was busy being a distraction. "I don't know why anyone thinks we need math in real life," Ethan grumbled, scribbling something nonsensical in the margins of his textbook. "Like, has anyone ever stopped in the middle of a sandwich to calculate the angle of their bite?" Sicil laughed, shaking her head. "Only you would turn a math problem into food," she teased. "Hey, food is life," Ethan said proudly, grinning. She smiled at his playful antics, her gaze lingering a little longer than usual. "I guess that's one of the things I like about you," she said absent-mindedly. Ethan looked up, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Oh? You like something about me, huh?" Sicil froze, realizing what she'd just said. I mean, as a friend," she stammered, her cheeks flushing pink. "Obviously I meant as a friend." Ethan smirked, leaning back in his chair with a triumphant grin. "Sure, Sicil, sure, as a friend. Got it." Her heart raced, and she quickly changed the subject, embarrassed by how easily the words had slipped out. But as she glanced at him, his knowing smile lingered in her mind. Another morning, Sicil and Ethan were grabbing breakfast at the campus cafe before class. Ethan, as usual, was juggling too many things: his coffee, a muffin, and his phone, all while trying to tell Sicil about some random fact he had learned. "So, did you know that sloths can hold their breath longer than dolphins?" Ethan said, his arms flailing as he balanced everything precariously. "Seriously? That's actually kind of cool," Sicil replied, half listening, more focused on his impending disaster. Just as she predicted, Ethan lost his balance. His coffee cup tipped, and with a comical expression of horror, he tried to save it, but instead ended up with half the muffin in his lap. Sicil burst out laughing, unable to stop herself. "Ethan, you're a walking disaster!" Ethan sighed dramatically, looking up at her with an exaggerated pout. "And yet you still hang out with me. That's gotta mean something, right?" Yeah, she teased, handing him a napkin. "It means I'm probably insane." As he wiped the crumbs off, he grinned up at her. "Or maybe you just like having me around. I mean, admit it, I make your life more interesting." Sicil rolled her eyes, but there was a warmth in her chest she couldn't deny. "Okay, fine, you do." A few weeks later, they went to a concert together, one of Sicil's favorite bands. Ethan, who had never even heard of them, still agreed to come along, mostly to spend time with her. During the show, Ethan's attempts at dancing were something between dad moves and interpretive dance, much to Sicil's amusement. She doubled over laughing when he started mimicking the lead singer's dramatic gestures. "You're ridiculous!" she shouted over the music, barely able to catch her breath. He shrugged, unbothered, and gave her a goofy grin. "Hey, at least I'm making you laugh." She playfully shoved him. "You always do." For a moment, as the music surged around them and Ethan pulled another silly dance move, Sicil felt something unexpected. There was a warmth that spread through her, not from the music or the laughter, but from him, being there, being with her. She quickly brushed the thought aside, but the seed had been planted. One afternoon, Sicil and Ethan were sitting under the oak tree, talking about everything and nothing like they often did. Ethan was being his usual self, making her laugh with some exaggerated story about how he once got locked in a bathroom for 2 hours. And that's when I realized. I had no phone, no way out, and the janitor didn't show up until way after hours. Ethan finished, shaking his head. It was basically my survival story. Sicil giggled, leaning back against the tree. "You've lived quite the life." Ethan, without missing a beat, looked at her with a soft smile. "Hey, as long as you're in it, I'd say my life's pretty great." Sicil blinked, caught off guard by his sincerity. She laughed awkwardly, trying to play it cool, but her heart skipped a beat. "You're such a sap." "Maybe, but I mean it," Ethan said, his voice quieter this time, a little more serious. Sicil felt her stomach flutter, the air between them suddenly charged. She quickly looked away, feeling awkward and unsure. "Well, Don't get too sentimental on me now. Ethan chuckled, leaning back against the tree beside her. No promises. One evening, they were walking back from class when they passed by a street performer. Ethan, as usual, couldn't resist joining in, pulling out his ridiculous air guitar routine. Sicil laughed so hard she had to stop walking, clutching her sides. As Ethan struck a final dramatic pose, she wiped a tear from her eye. "You're the absolute worst at that." Thank you, Ethan said, bowing to an imaginary audience. "I'll be here all week." Still giggling, Sicil blurted out, "I don't know what I'd do without you." Ethan straightened, surprised by her sudden confession. "Wait, what?" Realizing what she'd said, Sicil froze, eyes wide. I mean, for comic relief, obviously." Ethan raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Oh, really? Is that all I am? Your personal comedian?" Sicil felt her face heat up, and she quickly looked away. "Shut up, Ethan." He chuckled, clearly amused. Sure. Whatever you say, Sicil." But as they walked on, her heart raced. What would I do without him? The thought lingered, more serious than she wanted to admit. These small, seemingly ordinary moments were starting to add up for Sicil. Ethan's presence in her life was more than just comforting, it was becoming essential. Little by little, she began to wonder if perhaps deep down she'd started to fall in love too.